she applied, and she's at Notre Dame right now, looking at her first year. Haley was a surfer. Vanessa was a surfer. Casey, I want to call you Corey. I don't know why. So all these folks were in your position last year. Now they're going off. Diane was here before surf was even a gleam in my eye. What we'd like to start with is having the folks on the panel introduce themselves, talk about where they're from, what your major was. You know, for those of you who did surf, all the wonderful things about surf and none of the bad. You know, how did you get where you are today? So who wants to go first?
I can go ahead and start.
All right.
Can you hear me? Okay.
Stephanie. Hi, Stephanie.
Hi.
I'm having a hard time, I guess, understanding you right now.
Can you hear us all right?
Yeah, okay.
Okay. Were you the one that volunteered to go first, Stephanie?
Yeah. Okay, so my name is Stephanie. I graduated from CI May 2017. I did participate in the surf program the first year that it was offered. And I am currently beginning my second year in grad school.
Where?
Where are you?
At the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign.
You're right near me.
Oh yeah, Iowa.
Just want to talk a little bit more about what you do.
Oh, Stephanie, so can you tell us just a little bit about your decision to go to graduate school and the program that you're currently in?
Yeah, I think for me, during my time at CI, I was involved in research for, I don't know, maybe, I was at CI for a really long time. So I was involved with research maybe the last 3 years I was there. And so it just seemed like the right choice for me. I wanted to continue to do research. I know that eventually I want to be a professor at a university, and in order to do that, I need a PhD. And I'm in the neuroscience program at the U of I. And what I like about this program is it's very flexible. You don't have a lot of coursework, which is great for me because I'd rather be in lab than in classes. Yeah.
There's actual science going on behind you.
Yeah, I'm in lab. I'm running an experiment right now, so yeah.
Anyone else like to go?
Okay, I'll pick it up then. Hi, Haley, it's Casey. You're the only person on the panel that I know, besides Vanessa here. So I was in the surf program last year, the first year where there was a big cohort of, I think there were 24 people total. When we had that, it was a lot. I enjoyed a lot of the building, like the team things. Have they done the spaghetti and marshmallow thing yet?
Yes.
That was my favorite part of one of my favorite activities. And getting horribly blistered when we went to the island because I did the 10-mile hike inches, and that was a long day. So this last winter, I applied for PhD programs in bioorganic chemistry. I got into 3 separate programs, but ended up choosing UC Davis because they were the friendliest group. The person who runs the graduate department knew my name the second I walked in the door. They did all the research to get to know you and who you were when you walked in. So it was a really welcoming environment. A lot of the professors were professional and courteous, but also being real, nice and able to have a regular conversation with and not seem too disconnected from their students.
Okay, I'll go next. My name is Vanessa Lopez. I graduated in May. I majored in chemistry and I minored in biology and Chicano studies. I applied to PhD programs last winter with Casey. I was also involved in surf. And I got into 2 programs. I got into UC Riverside's Biomedical Sciences PhD program and the University of Washington's Chemistry PhD program, and I'm going to Seattle.
America's greatest city.
Of course. Yeah, and I would say that like what really helped my decision and where to go was knowing what was important to me. So one of my professors, Dr. told me that it's time to apply to grad school. So you're looking for a good project, a good PI, and a good lab team, and you kind of have to pick two out of the 3 that are really important to you. And so a good PI and a good lab environment is everything to me. And so, yeah, I just really like Washington's welcoming environment. They have top-notch research, but like everyone's super cool, like, not mean. So that was really important to me. And so, yeah.
Haley, you want to go next?
Sure. You guys can hear me, right?
Yeah.
All right. So hi, I'm Haley. I also did surf last year with Casey and Vanessa, and it was really intense, but it really helped prepare for graduate study, I think, and make me want to pursue it. I also applied to a lot of PhD and master's programs last year. In December, I got into a few master's programs, but Notre Dame's the only PhD program I got into, and it's also the one I liked the best. So I ended up coming here just because the faculty was amazing and really invested in the students, and they have a lot of resources and care about, I guess, making sure that you are taking care of yourself rather than giving you a huge teaching load, because a lot of grad schools will give you a heavy teaching load and have you teach undergrad courses, but I prefer a program where you can focus on your own education. So, yeah.
Thanks, Amy. Great. Diane?
Hello, can you hear me okay?
Purple.
Good, thank you. So my name's Diane. I'm in Iowa right now, but I am from Oxnard, California. I am working on a PhD. I'm starting my 5th year. I did do a master's before that, and I guess I'm just going to look at the list. I think I knew I wanted to go to grad school because I knew I wanted to teach at the university level, and I couldn't do that without a PhD. I also have an undergrad in poli-sci, but I knew I didn't want to go any further. I wanted to look at the humanities and cultural studies. So when I got the master's, it was kind of a bridge because I needed work in that discipline. So I have the extra like couple years. Is that it?
Yeah, awesome. And then we also have joining us is Amber Kramer, one of our former members of the Spring 2015 Interdisciplinary Research Learning Communities. Amber, could you introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Amber. I'm currently up at Oregon State University in Corvallis, sweating my butt off because it's hot up here. I'm entering my 4th year as a PhD student. Let's see, when I started looking at graduate schools, I think somebody earlier was saying, I looked for professors that I wanted to work in the field that I wanted to work in. And that kind of guided my whole process on where I was going to apply. And then when acceptance came in, like I got it into the top professor that I wanted to work with. So that's where I ended up coming to graduate school. Anything else?
Yeah. So as we mentioned, we have a wide array of experiences on here, from students that are going to start their 1st year of grad school and students that are in the middle or towards the end. So actually, for Vanessa and Casey, and Haley, as you'll be starting your 1st years, could you actually kind of reflect back to last summer and kind of give to our current students what do you wish you would have done differently, or what piece of advice would you give to students as they're thinking about possibly applying as early as this upcoming fall?
Take the GRE as soon as possible, because you can take it again and they only care about the highest score usually. And when it comes to writing personal statements, get it revised by everyone on campus that you trust reading your statements. If there's a professor you trust, if there's any staff members that you like, and if you want to have like an intercultural or interdisciplinary kind of statement alone, like all the UCs that I applied to had a personal history statement and a personal statement, where the personal history statement was helping underrepresented minorities, that kind of broad range. Anybody who's an expert in that kind of field, to make sure you're using the correct terminology and to help you best analyze what you've done. And just having feedback. I went through 8 different revisions of my statements because they want you to talk about the school that you're applying to and everything you've done in less than 3,000 characters.
Yes. My biggest piece of advice, it's kind of cheesy, but I guess it's just to be fearless in like applying to grad school, because like making the decision to apply to a PhD program is kind of like a big deal. And so with that comes like the GRE, your personal statement, your grades, your research, like, and everything else. And so it can kind of get overwhelming, and it's really easy to kind of just like put it off, like, you know, deadline's due in December, like it's okay, whatever. But I would recommend getting started early, because once you're taking classes in the fall, it can get really overwhelming. And something that I learned was I had like an Excel sheet of what I was interested in. And then in like each department, I had like a professor that I was interested in, and I emailed like every professor from each department that I was interested in, just to get that out of the way. Because you can kind of tell like how well you're going to get along with someone, like kind of off of an email, you know, like if you email someone and they just like blow you off, then you're like, okay, whatever. But if they're like, hey, like, you know, I am accepting grad students, you know, tell me more about yourself or whatever, then like you can form a better connection that way. And so I did that early on so that I knew like where I wanted to apply. Because applications are really expensive. They're like 95 to like 105 per school, per like program. And so you want to make sure that you're not, like, there were some people that I emailed that weren't taking grad students this coming year because they were already full. And like, I wouldn't have known that just by looking at their program website. So that would be like my biggest piece of advice. And to get started early.
Haley?
Yeah, I agree with everything that Casey and Vanessa said. Like I started writing my personal statement probably in September or October, and I was still so overwhelmed when time came around for applications, especially because you also want to try and personalize it to each school and program. So it's a lot of work, especially if you're taking a full load of classes, but it's doable. And like Casey said, get everyone as possible to proofread it, and don't be afraid to let your professors read your drafts. That was my biggest fear. I didn't want anyone to read like my personal statement drafts, but that's what helped the most. And they would just pick out the things I was trying to say and then tell me to actually say it. So that was really helpful. And also, yeah, just don't be afraid. Like, I know it's really hard to kind of think like, oh, I want to go into graduate school, but am I smart enough and blah, blah, blah. But chances are you are. So just go for it.
How did you decide which schools to look at? I mean, there are, you know, hundreds of schools that offer these degrees.
I specifically stay local because all my family's in California, so a university in California. So I actually applied to 10 schools. I have a lot of money. I applied to every UC except for SF and Merced because neither of them had the program I wanted. I also applied to Caltech and Stanford on the off chance, but after doing all the applications, I found the one where the most, I don't want to say human, but the personable, they care about you, the most willing to establish your work-life balance to help you is probably was up on the highest priority, because if they want me starting working at 100% and then 1 week later, it's like, okay, now that you know the reins, you're going to be working 7 days a week. If you're not here by 9 a.m., I'm going to check the lab and give you an email and want to know why you're not there. So it was a lot of like, which professor is hands-off enough that I can go in on my own schedule while also being able to get everything done, and they're still there for all the recommendations.
Yeah, my dream school was the University of Washington, and that kind of started off because I went to a conference, and I was born in Washington, but that's like a side story. But I went to a conference, and they have like these like what are they called? Like the school affairs.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyways, and so they were tabling, and and I met a professor there, and I just thought we clicked like really well. And so then I emailed him and I was like, hey, like I'm looking to go to graduate school, da da da. And then he was like, yeah, he gave me an application waiver. So I didn't have to pay for that one. And then when I went to my interview process for Washington, I just felt, it was like 7 interviews and they were each like 30 minutes long. So it was like 3 hours of like interviews back to back. But I just felt so much more of like myself there. Like you'll see like when you interact with people and like who you want to work with, like depending on your experiences as an undergrad, you'll be able to like pick out like what you look for in a lab and like what you look for in a PI. And I just found that my personality and like my research interests just fit a lot more with the University of Washington versus UC Riverside. So that was kind of how I picked Washington.
Haley, you're way the hell out there in the middle of the country.
Yeah. So I definitely never thought I would end up in Indiana. But the way I picked the schools to apply to was a little bit different, I guess. In all honesty, I just looked up fully funded PhD English programs. And then from there, I started looking at their faculty and chose from the faculty from fully funded programs, just because I knew if I didn't get into a well-funded program, I couldn't go because there's no way I could afford to take out the loans. So that's how I chose, but I definitely would recommend going off of faculty and emailing them, and especially looking at whether or not the faculty you're interested in are tenured or not, because that has a lot to do with whether or not they're going to be there while you go through the program. And you don't want to start a program and then have the faculty you wanted to work with leave, because that would just not be fun. But.
Same question maybe for Stephanie, Diane, or Amber, of what led you to where you're at, or like, yeah.
I'll go. I honestly started looking at research papers that were coming out and in the last like year or two in the field that I wanted to look at. And I went to the PI on those papers and found out where they were and started looking them up that way. So mine was more what I wanted to do focused, and then that just led me to whatever schools. And I rolled some out based on where they were located, because there's no way I was going to live in Fairbanks, Alaska. So I couldn't do the research up there. But ultimately it went off of the research I wanted to do and who was doing that, and then kind of like flowed down that path.
I'll go next. So same for me. Like I said, I had a BA and I needed to go to cultural studies. So the master's I really just chose based off of, who's going to get me to a PhD program. Once I got at the level to apply, I already had some really interesting, like strange interests that I needed, like really specific. So that's how I ended up here in Iowa. I do a lot of work with the built environment and public memory and trauma. And it just so happens that somebody who does similar work was here. So that's kind of how I ended up here.
Stephanie, anything you'd like to add?
Let's see. For me, I spent my whole life in California, and I think I really wanted to be challenged. And it has been challenging, but I definitely got what I asked for. It's been challenging. But yeah, so basically location was, I don't know if it was necessarily important, but I did want to leave California. And the weather is terrible here. I really, really miss the beautiful 75 degrees and, Thousand Oaks all the time. Getting used to snow and shoveling snow, that's been fun. But I think overall it was the research. The research is great here, and that's why I'm here, so yeah.
Do we have any questions from our current surf students? We have a great wealth of knowledge of our panelists out here that were once in issues.
And just real quick, you just introduce yourself and your major. My name is Melvin Kim. I am an environmental science major, and I'm doing bat surveys with Dr. Jason Miller. Testing is for the people that are in grad school and have been. What were your expectations going into grad school, and how have they been met or not met? And what have you been surprised by? Or has it been a great experience the whole time? Has it been really terrible?
I can answer that. I think, and it's kind of on the list, the workload. The workload, so I think I was prepared for grad school coming out of an undergrad, but the reading load. So I know a lot of people in the room are probably like science, which I don't know about the workload, but in the humanities, it's at least a book a week in each class. It's quite a bit. So being prepared for the workload. Also, I think one of the things is having a good emotional support base once you get to grad school, because it's isolating. I mean, sometimes you'll spend a lot of time. Now, I don't know about people who are in labs because but for me in the humanities where I have to just be alone and read all day, all weekend, it's important to kind of have an outlet.
I agree. Having an outlet, having some sort of emotional support is essential, especially in sciences, because you have a lot put on you all of a sudden. It makes your undergrad seem really easy. But yeah, you get a lot of workload. You have a lot expected of you from the get-go as soon as you get there, and which is great on some levels, but on some levels it can be very overwhelming. And I've seen other graduate students break. I've been close, but I didn't break. I'm still here. So, but you just have to be prepared and have a good system, a good outlet.
Yeah.
For Diane, what were you studying again? And then throughout your grad school and PhD, have you been able to does it allow you to do other things studying you have time to do other things? I mean, you have a small job on the side, or what has that experience been like for you?
So for me, in my master's program, I could have a job. There was time. There wasn't a lot of time, but it was doable. In my PhD program, I teach. So that's how we were kind of talking earlier about getting something that's fully funded versus one that will have you teach. So I don't have a lot of time, but I will say for me, my first 2 years was all reading and doing coursework. So again, you're going to do more coursework. But after your first 2 years, you will take comprehensive exams or some kind of exam, or at least in the humanities and social sciences you do. And after that, I feel like it gets easier. So it's going to get harder, and then you'll be able to breathe again. And so, yeah, so some programs will not let you have a job. They will not let you work because they're fully funding you or whatever. They require so many, hours or whatever. Master's programs are different. Master's programs will usually have night courses where you theoretically could work part-time because you have to allow for the amount of reading. It's maybe a lot. So, but yeah, finally, after I finished my comp exams, after my third year and I did my prospectus, which is what I want to do the dissertation on, I feel like I had a little bit of breathing room, finally.
How well prepared did you feel, those of you who are in graduate school, by your time here?
Okay, I'll start. I felt as prepared as I could be. I did research on campus. I was part of SURF. I tutored on campus, so I had a little bit of experience in the teaching realm. One thing that I think helped me a lot is I came up here to OSU before I started my coursework, and my PI was able to give me a job during the summer so I could get my feet wet working in the lab that I'm working in. which helped get me like in the right gear for grad school. But yeah, ultimately, I feel like CI, being able to do research at CI and being involved in all that helped me at least be in the right headspace of where I needed to be for grad school, even though the workload was a lot higher once I got here.
For me, in political science, we had a capstone project at Channel Islands. And I feel like doing that extra research work, which I was able to use like statistics and stuff I do not need to use now, really helped because it let me generate something that I can still say, oh, I did this type of quantitative, qualitative work. And so if I didn't have it, I wouldn't have been, I don't know, I think it maybe gave me a little bit of leg up on other people because they didn't have capstones.
Another question?
Yeah, sure.
Have any of you considered doing the graduate program outside of the US? And do you know what that process would be like?
I looked into it. There was a school in Sweden that I was really interested in, but it's different in that, like, I don't know how it is in other parts of the world, but at least in the, I guess I forget what they're called, but all those European ones that have this free schooling system, they're on different like years. So you have to submit for that program. They wanted me to submit like my senior thesis along with the application. And it was mostly the same stuff though, like a statement of intent, 3 letters of recommendation. They just had a little bit of an earlier timeline. And if you're interested in that, I definitely would recommend contacting the graduate coordinators of the program because they'll give you everything you need. But the process is almost the same. It's harder from my personal experience. It was a lot harder to find funding though.
One question that I have thinking about your intention to go to graduate school, what are your current career aspirations?
So right now, I'm leaning more towards potentially a position at like a CSU, something like that, where I could subject people, for lack of a better term, to like getting their feet wet to research, showing them the basics of research while also trying to promote them to want to do either a similar path or continue science for more than just making money. Because for a lot of science, where the money is going to be for things that also make money, but that isn't necessarily the research that produces the best results. It's the research that lines people's pocketbooks, and you have companies like Bayer and Amgen that just make so much money, and they're not having science that can be practically used for more so than profit.
I guess like since I took organic chemistry, I had wanted to be an organic chemistry professor at a university. And that's been like my career goal for like the past like couple years. But at my interview sessions at Washington, like all of their alumni go into industry. And so the professors there were like definitely like keeping your options open, and you never know what could happen. So I'm keeping my options open, but I think I'll always have like an interest in academia and staying.
Any of our other panelists about your career aspirations?
I'm basically the same. I'm pretty certain that I'm gonna stay in academia down the road. I don't know if it'll end up at a smaller university like CI where I'm working with undergrads and exposing them to research, or in a full university working with graduate students down the road. But I definitely enjoy the teaching aspect where I can kind of help people, especially understand chemistry, because some people have problems with that. And then I really don't care about making money, so I don't really want to go the industry route, but I'm not going to rule anything out at this point. Wherever I can find a job in a year, I will find a job.
Thanks.
Yeah, I've wanted to be a professor, but I've wanted to be a lot of things. I wanted to be an editor for a while. I was a creative writing emphasis at CI, so I'm always rewriting as well. But right now as professor, I'd love to go to like a junior college or something and help those kids. I'd rather work with students that are more first generation, just because that's what I was, and my professors were a big help to me. So.
Thank you. And Diane?
Same with me. So I really would like to teach. I did learn, because I do teach here, that I would really like to teach at a small school. I really like the small classes that I teach as opposed to like large lectures. So if the job market's good to me, maybe I can come back to California.
Are you on the job market right now?
Not yet. Not yet. Next year.
Did you're in grad school to now, did it change, did the grad school experience change your goals?
For me, no. I came here knowing that I wanted to be a professor down the road, and I'm still there. So for me, it's kind of just reaffirmed it. I like doing research, and I like working with undergrads. I mentor a couple in our lab, so I know I'm where I want to be.
Same for me.
So some of you have talked about your teaching experiences. So Amber, have you taught as well then?
Yeah, my first 2 years while I was taking coursework, I was a teaching assistant. I taught, the first year I was teaching freshman level chemistry, and then my second year I was teaching senior level chemistry. So I had a little bit of the range of chemistry for college teaching, which was, again, it was really interesting, and I enjoyed it, and it has reaffirmed where I'm at. Now I don't have to teach anymore. I'm just a research assistant to finish out my PhD, which is great. But that's something, depending on where you go, what funding is available to you. My PI had the ability to take me on as a research assistant after my first 2 years. So once my coursework was done, I no longer had to teach.
I'd like to get a little bit more into the mechanics of paying for graduate school, because some things have been thrown around here about RAs and TAs and all that kind of stuff, but you know, that's for all of you who are now headed to or in graduate school. Can you explain how you can afford all of this?
Okay, I'll go first again then. So they are, when I got my acceptance letters, they essentially gave me a letter saying, we'll pay for all of your coursework, all of your class, all of that is free. So that's just paid. And then they give you a yearly stipend that's paid out like a salary. It's not hourly. You don't get the benefits of that if you're working 50 hours a week, but I'm getting enough to, if I live with 2 other graduate students, live in the house with them, have enough money to help pay for everything. And then I'll be able to live up there and then TA whenever my advisor doesn't have money. So it's more quarter to quarter, year to year than it is you're contractually obligated for this long. I am looking for a fellowship there, which is in a chemical biology program, which would mean I only have to TA for 1 year and then everything else is covered. So.
For my acceptance into Washington, my tuition is waived and I have a monthly stipend, and I don't have to teach my first year, so I got a research assistantship, and I got a fellowship that'll help cover me for 3 years, and I got another fellowship for being a top grad applicant, and so I only TA my second year, so. And my tuition and my stipends are coming in every month for as long as I'm in the program. So when I got into Riverside, they gave me a 5-year plan, which would be ideal, but like sometimes it could take longer. It could take 6 or 7 years or whatever. And so Riverside would have covered me for 5 years, but Washington is covering me for as long as I'm in the program. So it's
If I could just add one thing quickly, I do also get, being at a UC, I also get full benefits of insurance. So I get full medical insurance, dental, and optical, all through the UC system, in addition to the stipend.
I have that too. Based on my stipend, I also have full benefits. Mine is contingent as long as I'm here. It's not a contract that I have to finish in a certain amount of time. And there are always options to keep applying for fellowships. Every year you can apply for new fellowships and get your own funding, which would then, you might not have to teach if you can get your own funding. And depending on who you're working for, they will encourage you to do that, because it not only does it help your graduate studies, but it helps your CV down the road, make you look more competitive down the road if you've applied for funding and been able to get your own funding.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so for me too, I've got a 5-year package. I teach. I've been on fellowship for a whole year, so I'm about to start teaching again. I can apply for more fellowships. I just actually like teaching. I've learned it keeps me from going crazy. And same thing, I have insurance and same exact type of thing.
Also the same with me. I get the insurance benefits of the university, and they waived my tuition, and I get a stipend, and luckily I was offered a fellowship on top of it. What's cool about grad schools is if you get into multiple, they'll kind of start fighting for you, so you can argue for higher tuition. If you want to go to a school that maybe someplace else offered you more than them, so they'll kind of fight for you if they want you, so that's nice.
And then Stephanie, we were just talking about funding for graduate school, if you had anything to add about your experience.
When I arrived here, I got a 2-year fellowship, and that's about to run out at the end of this year. And then I'm applying for some more fellowships right now. But I mean, I think everyone basically covered it. I also have full benefits, and I only get paid once a month, but I'm used to that because when I worked at CI, we only got paid once a month, so that wasn't too difficult. But I know for some people, it took some time to get used to that. Yeah, and cost of living is really low here in the Midwest, so doing pretty okay.
So at the beginning, Vanessa, Casey, and Haley kind of talked about what they wish they would have done differently for the applying to graduate school process. So for our students that have been there at least a year or more, being a first-year grad student, it's like in a lot of ways when we think about being a first-generation undergrad college student, there's a lot of things of this hidden curriculum. Is there anything that you can share about grad school, of the hidden curriculum, of how people can maybe think about getting a leg up, or some of these things that you think you would have done differently in those first 2 years to kind of improve your lot?
I was really fortunate to arrive here the summer before I started, and I think that helped me get acclimated to the surrounding area, but also it allowed me to get to meet a lot of people who I still keep in touch with. I am the only, I guess, female Latina in my department, and I'm also in the Midwest, and there aren't that many Latinos or Latinas out here, so that was also really difficult for me to get used to. It was a big culture shock, but what I would recommend is just to find those people who, I guess, in a sense, remind you of home, and get involved. Kind of like I think Amber was saying, you need to find your outlet, so I would try to find that as soon as possible.
And it's important, I mean, even kind of the same as when you come to CI, know what resources you have available for you. Each university has a grad school that runs things differently, plus your school, the college that you're in, plus the department that you're in within the college that you're in. So there's a system of things that all have the ability to help you figure stuff out. And I actually kind of wish I would have gotten involved a little bit more on the on that side of things. We have we're unionized, so we've got a union of graduate students that works to kind of keep our salary competitive and our insurance competitive and stuff along those lines. And I wish I would have been a little bit more involved in that stuff, because it would have helped me know more people on campus other than just in my department. It's easy to kind of get pigeonholed in your department and then you don't know anybody else around. So having the ability to spread yourself out really helps, like what Stephanie said, finding people that you're more alike, even if they're not in your department.
And any advice from your first couple of years of grad school?
Again, get those outlets. Also, when you apply to grad schools and they accept you, usually they'll have like a visiting day before you even accept, where you can go and kind of meet people. Like whenever people come here, all the grad students in the department, which I am in a small department, will come and take them out to dinner, show them around. And so it's a good way to know, like, not only is there faculty support, but is there other people? And I think finding that is important. So maybe going to visit ahead of time, which I didn't do. Sometimes they will even pay like airfare and stuff. If the department has money, they will actually fly you out and pay for that. We will pay for people to come visit. I think if I could look back as an undergrad, I might do more conferences. I did one, and I feel like maybe looking at like planning ahead on like CV stuff, and because that could actually help you get into certain schools. I think I could have done more of that.
Do you have a question? So a question to all the panelists thinking about when you were applying to graduate school. So I guess kind of two questions. Like one, were you ever kind of on that fence where you kind of thought like, well, do I really want to apply to a grad program? And if so, what kind of pushed you over the top? And the reason I ask that is in a lot of conversations with our students in this year's cohort, that's a lot of stories that I've received where people kind of want to apply, but they're really kind of unsure. And I think maybe thinking ahead where you all are in your positions of what kind of put you over that you're like, yeah, this is the decision I want to kind of go through with the application process.
Okay, so with mine, it was, I spent the summer of my sophomore year writing a paper. So I spent that time getting a paper published and doing all the research and finalization of going through the editors and everything that requires. And while necessarily that wasn't the most fun environment, just the thinking of everything I've done is so worth something and all of that. I think the other benefit is I was working with someone who was 2 years ahead of me. So he kind of set somewhat of a path of everything that he's done, and seeing him do it and get somewhere, and then me being more qualified than he was in being able to do it, definitely helps of having somebody who's there, who's done it before, who's willing to help you, especially if you know them well enough.
Yeah, I don't think for me it was never a question of like whether I wanted to go to grad school. It was always a question of whether I can get into grad school. And so I think like a lot of times, like when you're dealing with like your goals and stuff, it's like easy to have like imposter syndrome. And so I think that was like something that I dealt with a lot, was like, I don't know, like, am I qualified for this? Like, you know, did I get things easy here? Like, I don't know, like, you know, did I get things because people like me or because I deserve them? And like, you know, why did I never, you know, have certain things? I don't know. There was just a lot. And so I think what helped me a lot, I know, right? I'm just like vomiting my issues, but I think, but I think what helped me a lot and like keeping me grounded was my support system. And so I learned later on to trust few, and that like not everyone has your best interest. And so I held on to those that did, like Casey, and like my professors who were all like undeniably like, go to grad school, like you can do it. And I think having a good support system is everything, because there are going to be times like even just in applying that you're going to doubt yourself and like maybe I'll apply next year, or like maybe I should do this first or whatever. And so I think, yeah, that would be my thing.
I think, oh, go ahead.
Oh, you can go first.
I think for me, the way I navigated like all of grad school was to not think ahead, to be like, I'm here, and not like, oh, I just got a master's, because the second I do that, I will like scare myself or something. So I kind of just like stayed exactly like not looking like, oh, I just finished this, because I felt like then I'd be like, oh, well, maybe I can't do a PhD, or maybe I can't do whatever. So I kind of just like compartmentalized things I was doing and not looked ahead. I think like the most challenging thing for me was not to like decide to go, was like there are times you will be like, what did I do? You know what I mean? Oh, I've got to get out of here. I'm just push through it, because I think it's pretty normal.
Yeah, I was never someone who, I never really thought I would go to college even. So deciding to go to grad school was, for a long time, felt like an all but impossible decision to come to. But a lot like what Vanessa said, I had a really strong support system, and I was really lucky at CI. I had the most incredible faculty who really encouraged me, and doing surf last year really kind of hammered in like doing research and working one-on-one with faculty is like, this is what I want to keep doing. And so that kind of showed me that I could do it. So that kind of helped me make the decision to just go for it.
Amber or Stephanie, anything to add?
Based on my career goals and knowing that I wanted to teach at the university, it really wasn't a question of, do I want to go to grad school or not? It was, if I want to do that, I have to go to grad school. So for me, it wasn't I didn't have like a defining moment of, do I want to do this or not? It was just, okay, I'm doing this. And put my head down and go.
Stephanie, anything to add on there? I guess for the last.
I think Amber covered it. That's pretty much how I felt too.
Awesome. All right. So unless we have any last questions from our student panel, go ahead, Debbie.
What's like the applying to fellowships like in terms of like competitiveness, or what is like some common things that they all look for? How did you find out about certain fellowships?
So for my fellowships, they were departmental fellowships. So they're actually through the grad college. So I don't know how competitive they all were. I know like one was pretty competitive. And so I had to get like a couple letters. Same thing for like the application process. You get your advisor, you write your statement, and then they decide. But I will say, like, I think like there's a lot of like people that are willing to help. So there's usually a lot of like professors and people that will point you to fellowships that you don't know about. So.
And there are, depending on what field you're in, there are national fellowships that come through National Science Foundation or NIEHS if you're doing environmental health science kind of work. If you're doing medical research, you can go through NIH and get different fellowships. There's a lot out there, and most of the time grad schools have at least links on their pages to how to find them. Yeah. So you can see if you fit the criteria for them and can apply to them.
The one thing I'll add in there too, because this might be useful for Casey, Vanessa, Haley, and Stephanie, I think as well too, the NSF also has a pre-doctoral fellowship that if you apply in your first or second year, you get paid on that fellowship. But at some institutions, like when I was at Penn State, they would give students $1,000 just to apply for it, because the idea is like if you have more people apply for it, that's less money that your university has to pay for your fellowship and someone from the outside. And the big benefit on that, where a lot of us talk about conferences are a good thing to help us work ahead on a paper or a manuscript, that fellowship requires you to come up with like a long-term proposal. So early on, it kind of forces you to start even thinking about a dissertation or a long thing as well. So those are all other things like I wish I would have done in hindsight of going back and all that stuff too. So, all right. Well, everyone else, please join me in thanking our excellent panelists with the wealth of knowledge that they had to share. And yes, on behalf of the CERF community, our CI alum, our CERF alumni, IRLC alumni, thank you for spending the time. And I think one of the cool things to kind of hear, at least on behalf of Sean and I hearing, is our former students even thinking about the future of your willingness or your aspirations to work with future students and all that. And I think that's like a really just a cool story to think about the long term. So we wish you all an enjoyable rest of the summer and best of luck with the upcoming academic year. And thank you so much again.
Hope it cools down.
Yeah. All right. Thanks so much, everyone. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.